Welcome back. This is Math, Chapter 5, Lesson 5. Compare and order rational numbers. The essential question: how are integers and absolute value used in real-world situations? What will we learn today? To compare decimals and fractions, to compare and order rational numbers, fill in the circle with less than, greater than, or equal to make a true statement. -1 2/10 compared to 8/10. Graph the decimals on a number line. Here's 0. -1 2/10 is here. 8/10 is here. Since -1 2/10 is to the left of -8/10, -1 2/10 is less than 0 and 8/10. Here's another example. Is 0 and 4/10, -0 and 4/10 less than, greater than, or equal to 1 and 1/10? Plot the points on a number line. Which number is farther to the right? Pause while you're doing your work. Press play when you're ready to go on. Number 2, fill in the blank with less than, greater than, or equal to make a true statement. -1 and 40/100 compared to -1 and 25/100. Think about it. Which one goes farther left on a number line? They've made a vertical number line here. So which one would be farther down on this number line? They graph -1 and 4/10 here, and -1 and 25/100 is farther up. The higher you go on a vertical number line, the greater the number. The lower you go on a vertical number line, the less the number. Since -1 and 40/100 is below -1 and 25/100, -1 and 40/100 is less than -1 and 25/100. Here's another example. Is -3 and 15/100 less than, greater than, or equal to -3 and 25/100? Think about where they'd land on a number line. Which one is farther to the left? If it's a vertical number line, which one is farther down? Show all of your thinking in your math notebook. Bring your questions to the group. Press play when you're ready to go on. Number 3, fill in the blank with less than, greater than, or equal to make a true statement. -3/8 compared to -5/16. Rename the fractions using the least common denominator. So the common denominator is going to be 16. So -3/8 equals -6/16. -5/16 equals -5/16. They haven't changed it. It already had 16 as a denominator. -6 is less than -5. Now they're comparing the numerators because our denominators are identical. So they compare the numerators. -6 compared to -5. -6 is less than -5. Therefore, -6/16 is less than -5/16. And -3/8 is less than -5/16. Notice they went back to the original problem to do their final answer. Check using a number line. Here's -6/16, -5/16. Check. -6/16 is less than -5/16. Here's another example. Is -2/5 less than, greater than, or equal to -4/15? You're going to need to find a common denominator and then compare the numerators. Use a number line if you like. Show your work in your math notebook. Pause while you're working. Bring all your questions to the group. Press play when you're ready to go on. Fill in the blank with less than, greater than, or equal to make a true statement. -51/100 compared to -8/15. Can we compare decimals to fractions? Remember that chapter? What did we have to do? Rename 8/15 as a decimal. We can compare decimals to decimals and fractions to fractions and percent to percent. But it's very tricky business to compare a decimal to a fraction. So we're going to make them all the same animal before we compare. Negative 53 hundredths. When I do 8 divided by 15, I'm going to get a repeating decimal, 0 and 53 hundredths, with the 3 has a notation bar. Okay, so negative 0.53 is a farther left than negative 0.51. Negative 53 hundredths is less than negative 51 hundredths. Going back to the original numbers, negative 51 hundredths is greater than negative 8/15. Negative 8/15 was the negative 53 hundredths. Here's another example. Heads up for a non-terminating decimal, also called a repeating decimal. Go ahead and use a calculator to figure out 9/11 as a decimal. Show all of your work, pause while you're working, press play when you're ready to go on. Number 5, order the set. Negative 2 and 46 hundredths, negative 2 and 22/25, and negative 2 and 1/10, from least to greatest. Negative 2 and 22/25 and negative 2 and 1/10 as decimals to the hundredths place. We're going to change them all to decimals in order to compare them. We've got 1 decimal and 2 fractions. We choose to turn them all into decimals before trying to compare them. Negative 2 and 22/25 equals negative 2 and 88 hundredths. Compared to negative 2 and 1/10, negative 2 decimal 1. On a number line, graph the decimals. Negative 2 and 88 hundredths is there. Negative 2 and 46 hundredths is there. And negative 2 and 1/10 is here. From least to greatest, the order is negative 2 and 22/25, negative 2 and 46 hundredths, and negative 2 and 1/10. Going back to the original problem, checking it on the number line, then taking this information from the number line, returning it back to the original form to say your answer. Here's another one. Order the set negative 3 and 1/5, negative 3 and 12/25, negative 3 and 3/10. Do what you got to do to change them all into decimals. Show your work in your math notebook. Pause while you're working. Press play when you're ready to go on. Number 6, Mr. Plum's science class is growing plants under different conditions. The table shows the difference from the average for some students' plants. Order the differences from least to greatest. So Ricky has 3 and 1/4 inch difference. Debbie's has negative 2 and 2/10. Suni has a positive 1 and 7/10. And Lenora has a negative 1 and 7/10. Express each number as a decimal. Ricky's plant, 3 and 1/4, equals 3 and 25 hundredths. Debbie's plant already was in a decimal, negative 2 and 2/10. Suni's plants, 1 and 7/10, already a decimal. And Lenora, negative 1 and 7/10, easily changes to a decimal. Now we're going to compare the decimals from least to greatest. The differences are negative 2 and 2/10, negative 1 and 7/10, 1 and 7/10, and 3 and 1/4. Here's one for you. The lengths of 4 different snakes in the reptile exhibit at the zoo are 2 and 5/6 feet, 3 and 6/10 repeating feet, 2 and 2/3 feet, and 3 and 625 thousandths of a foot. Order the lengths from least to greatest. You're going to need to change them all into decimals, compare the place values, Put them in order from least to greatest. Show all your work in the notebook. Press play when you're ready to go on. How did what you learned today help you answer the essential question? How are integers and absolute value used in real-world situations? That's all for now.